Welcome to the Mind Grow Radio Storyteller Series podcast. I am your host, Stephanie Kathan, and I am super excited to sit down with today's guest, who is a seasoned brand builder and marketing leader with over 25 years of expertise. She's the visionary founder of Ratliff Consulting, specializing in branding and advertising for diverse industries from GPC to beverage and furniture, and she is at the forefront of innovation. Elizabeth Goede is a pioneer in advocating for AI integration in marketing. She champions the use of technology to elevate brand strategies and foster business growth. She's a sought-after speaker and a trainer on AI, providing invaluable insights for companies aiming to stay ahead in that ever-changing landscape. And in addition to all that, she's a dedicated advocate for empowering women entrepreneurs through initiatives like Spark Start Her, the AI Showdown, Spark Club, and Glow Up. She fosters a community that supports women in their journey from solopreneur to visionary CEO. And it is my absolute honor to welcome Elizabeth Goede to the Mind Grow Studio. Welcome, Elizabeth.
Stephanie, thank you so much for having me. I'm really looking forward to our conversation today.
First, let me just say that I think you are amazing. I had the absolute pleasure of being able to connect with Elizabeth in person last year, and just trust me when I say she is somebody that you definitely want to know, and I can't wait to dive into this conversation. But before we do that, tell us a little bit about what life looked like before. Like, did you know you were going to be pioneering as a woman leader in this tech world when you started this journey?
No, I didn't. As a matter of fact, I went to college. Well, gosh, if we go back a little bit further than that. So I originally thought I was going to be in medicine. And I decided actually once I got to college that I really had this talent in art. And I actually ended up graduating with a Bachelor's of Fine Arts degree. So at that point in time, I just thought I was going to be living this life of the artist, starving artist lifestyle. And thanks to a lot of amazing people along the way, I sort of took this very windy road and ended up in sort of the marketing branding space, and have loved it ever since.
That is amazing. And what you're doing is amazing. And I imagine at sometimes challenging because you are a leader, a powerful woman in this male-dominated industry. And what is that like?
So, it's interesting. I just had breakfast with a couple men yesterday that are also in the tech space, and I was recounting a story that from last year at about this time, and in about a week and a half, we're going to be at exactly 1 year ago. I was at the Gen AI conference in San Francisco, and it was a sold-out conference with 1,200 people there, and I think there were 20 to 50 women. And in some respects, I wasn't really surprised by that because when you're in the tech space for a long time, you realize it's a very male-dominated space. You realize that there are very, very specific roles that women play even when they're in the tech space. And I think that it was a really big wake-up call when you look at the fact that this conference was for artificial intelligence. You looked at the role that artificial intelligence was really, we were at that point in time really hitting that catalytic moment of that hockey stick projectile towards the sky. And it became a personal passion for me to ensure the fact that we were getting good representation in these tools. And the real importance for that is the fact that these, especially generative AI tools, learn from the users. And if we don't have good representation, especially women using these tools, the tools are going to be somewhat incomplete and unintentionally biased against men. And so I personally advocate wherever I can to ensure that women have the confidence, We remove the fears that sometimes come along with using artificial intelligence, and we figure out how to use it in an ethical way that's going to help us be most efficient in our lives and in our business.
That's such a powerful statement that you made on a couple of things. And the first one I want to touch on is that the AI gets programmed by the user. And I think that's the thing that a lot of people don't realize. I didn't really have a good understanding of it when I first started playing with it. And it's so important what you're saying, that the feminine, the woman, needs to be in that programming.
Yeah, when you think about it, Stephanie, it's also like how we ask questions is very different than how a man would ask a question. We have more filigree with, with how we ask questions. We have a tendency to be a little bit more polite when we ask the questions. So absolutely.
So I've heard you say before that you think more women should be using AI and utilizing the benefits of it. But you did touch on the fear a little bit. So can we go into maybe squashing some of those fears that women might have, that anybody might have, but especially women, as they, start to discover this tool and ways that they can use it?
Absolutely. So, I think that it's not an unreasonable thing to think about having fear in artificial intelligence when you think about sort of how Hollywood has portrayed it and really, sort of what the opportunities are for this. I think that the biggest fear is the fact that it removes the human part. And I think that is true, and I want to be clear about that. It can be very true if you don't actually understand how to use these tools and leverage them so that they still are pulling out the human part of you. I think the second thing of where a lot of fear comes from, from a woman's perspective, is also this idea of like children and how artificial intelligence could be, allowing maybe their children to, in their minds, cheat. In school. And I think it's an interesting idea of how you can position it. My biggest fear in life is a blank page. And it has been my entire life because of the fact that, I'm a dyslexic and I certainly have different learning styles. Writing for me was always really difficult. And so, when you'd sit down and you'd have to write a paper, I could stare at that blank page for hours because it was the fact that I had to actually start. And I was, this was back in the days, I don't want to date myself, but this is back in the days when, you worked on a typewriter. So it was not as easy to sort of craft. You had to like really be thoughtful about it. And when you think about the opportunity for someone like me now in school, it would allow me to be able to foster the ideas that I have in a way that then I still have to go back and edit it. Like, just let's be very clear. These models hallucinate, which means that they can very convincingly be not giving you truthful information. The other thing is that it takes a little bit to train them so that they sound like you. And, there's every once in a while they get a little like gobbledygook, and is what I would call it, where they sometimes like start to make up words. So where I would say the division is, it helps take away that blank page and helps give you an opportunity to develop all these ideas that you have. But it also hones your skills in editing, in research, in validation, in being able to leverage the tools to help overcome where you might have shortcomings, but then start to develop your skills in other areas. So I would say even from like a parenting perspective, those are ways that I think if you turn it on its head, instead of saying it's cheating, I look at it and say more of it's an opportunity.
That's a good way to flip it, because people can just get paralyzed in fears and beliefs. And if you have the belief that it is bad, then you will see bad everywhere. And yes, I imagine that it can be used for cheating. It can also be used for creating and developing and really fine-tuning ideas. And I think my own personal opinion is just that AI, like anything else that has ever been released into the world, can be used for good or bad, right? It comes down to the use.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's interesting because that's a good transition into ethics too. You know, everybody wants to talk about if AI is ethical or not, but they forget about the role that the user plays in the ethics of using a tool like artificial intelligence.
Right. Right. Because the computer doesn't have a conscience, right? It's the people. It's conscious, like, you know, it's got intelligence in that way, but it doesn't have the human component of a conscience, like a Jiminy Cricket on your shoulder.
Exactly.
This is bad. It just does what you command it to do in some regards. And I think there are people who are working on this constantly and developing it more so that it's more user-friendly and has more safeguards in place and all of that. So let's talk a little bit about, well, you've been doing this AI thing for a lot longer than the world has known about AI in the way that it does now, right? You've been working with AI.
I've been in it a lot. Yeah, and I was actually even a tech founder, actually, of, we just called it algorithms back then, but it's a form of artificial intelligence. I actually worked for I was co-founder of a company called Finally way back, in 2012. And I worked with these incredibly brilliant people where we created an algorithm that matched the chemical components of wine to your taste profile. And so that was, it was awesome way back then. And actually it was an awesome company too, because it really sort of paralleled my love of tech and, you know, being able to work with wine, which I love, and also the branding side of things, because when you work with something that's going to sort of find commonalities places, you know, from a marketing perspective, we looked at it and we said, listen, you know, there's a really good way to sort of do some archetyping here. And we actually created wine personalities. So you were one of 6 wine personalities. And what we found was that was actually the thing that people loved the most about the company was the fact that they got, you know, one of their 6 wine personalities and they could sort of wear that personality proudly.
That is amazing. You are truly a leader and pioneer in this industry. And sometimes when I listen to you talk, I'm just like, how does she hold all of that information in her brain? Because you're so brilliant. You have so many brilliant aspects of you. And can I just girl fan on you for a minute? Because I truly, you are someone who I not only admire with the pioneering that you're doing in your industry, but the way that you shine the light for other women entrepreneurs. And I want to talk about the ways that you support them. Tell us a little bit about Spark Start Her and the AI Showdown and Spark Club and Glow Up and how you support women in those ways.
Absolutely. So the first thing I guess I'd like to make mention, because I think a lot of people don't necessarily realize this, when we look at women in business, because of the fact that men have for a long time taken a very prominent role, it has been very hard for us to find people that we can look up to. And so because we've had a hard time finding people we can look up to, we don't necessarily know that we should aspire for bigger things. And that was sort of the first, I mean, I was very fortunate because I grew up in a very, you know, supportive environment and, you know, was sort of told I could be anything and do anything. But I realized as I sort of got into my career, et cetera, that not everyone was raised that way. Not everyone had those opportunities. And I certainly faced adversity, I would say, you know, on the corporate side of sort of jobs in my early career. I mean, I would be told, you know, things about why there was such a big pay discrepancy was, you know, because I didn't have a family. It was, you know, very sort of I'm not going to get into sort of the sexual harassment side of things, but certainly there were a lot of those things that happened early in my career. But when you think about that, I mean, that's not an environment that's fostering women to do great things. I think the other thing is that when you look at even women entrepreneurs in starting companies, less than 2% of funding goes to women-owned or to women-founded companies. And when you start looking at those numbers, that is something that I don't know about you, Stephanie, but like that was very upsetting to me, to be honest, because when you look at women-owned businesses, we are more likely, as a founder, we're more likely to have a successful exit. We are more likely to be worth more upon exit. There is no statistical reason why women shouldn't be invested in. When we look at the number of businesses that women have, 80% of them have fewer than 5 employees.
Yes,
and
that I can believe.
And so when you look at that, like 40% of those are solopreneurs. Now, there's a couple of reasons for that. It could be the fact that a lot of women start businesses because they have very specific reasons for starting a company. I want to be able to pay for my company to go on vacation, pay for my family to go on vacation. I want to be able to, buy things that I maybe wouldn't be able to buy for, any other way. Maybe it's to afford something better for my children. And so when you look at those things, you think, okay, well then what they think is they just need to achieve that thing. So once they can afford the vacation, then they don't really need to go anywhere beyond that. And I'm not saying that you need to aspire to be more than that, but I want to at least open up your eyes to say, but if you want to, you can. There is no reason why you can't build a very successful, large company. And the way that I do that is through helping people build money-making brands that have value, and therefore increase the, reduce the fact that it's harder to find clients because they actually know that you exist because you're showing up consistently every single time out there in the marketplace. That it's easier to get buy-in because people trust who you are because you have a brand that actually stands behind you. And those are really, behind any program that I have, those are really the guiding principles.
So Spark Start Her, is that is a program you offer, or is that I know you have a podcast too, right?
Yeah. So the Spark Starter is really a community of inspiration. It's completely a free area to join because it's predominantly backed by different types of free trainings and things like that, but also my podcast, which is the Spark Starter podcast, where I profile women entrepreneurs that are giving inspiration to either entrepreneurs or women considering entrepreneurship.
And then you do the AI Showdown. I've attended a couple of those, which are really, really fun because you kind of say, okay, we've got these two kind of AIs. Which one is going to pass the test of what we need? And you kind of bring the benefits of both and the cons of both and give us a choice because you show us in real time what these things can do. And I got to say, I really love that. And that's a free group also that you offer, right?
It is. And this is all about, I think that at the root, I want to provide a fostering environment that it's like a no judgment zone. It's the place that you can ask any question. It's never a stupid question. And the AI Showdown really sort of helps do that. I think that a lot of people are very, very familiar with ChatGPT, which is great because that means they're familiar with, a form of generative, AI. And then in the Showdown group, we start to explore other types of programs and tools that you can use and that are similar to each other. I know that one of the ones that I believe you attended was the idea of ChatGPT versus Claude AI, which I know that there's still not as much awareness on Claude. And I think I sort of gave the analysis of the fact that ChatGPT was a little bit like having, coffee with talking to a child versus Claude that was more like having coffee with a friend. And the reason for that is Claude is a constitutional AI. They take AI ethics extremely seriously. Whereas, and frankly, Claude will a lot of times tell you it will not do something or it's something that you should do. It's got very specific guardrails on it. Whereas ChatGPT is more prone to hallucinations, more prone to trying to convince you that what it's saying is true. And so I sort of always laugh back to that particular showdown. But yes, that is also a free group. Some of the other programs that I have that are really exciting is the Spark AI Lab, and the Spark AI Lab is really full of different types of in-person retreats, workshops, and boot camps that really have a foundation in artificial intelligence, but are teaching you on how to leverage that in your business and growing your business. And so those, range anywhere from, an hour session all the way up to a week-long session. And then there's also the Spark Club, and the Spark Club is where we actually take all of the things that you built, and we really take that and make it consistent. So from a branding perspective, and you think about how you're fostering artificial intelligence, everything from coming up with an idea all the way through to building the name of your company, your tagline, your logo, your brand image, all of those things go into it. And then you sort of need a way to be consistent in how you show up over and over and over again, because that's really what starts to give your brand value. And so the Spark Club is really where we get together and we make sure that you're using your brand consistently. And we do things like build out, your programs and your social media that on a consistent monthly basis.
I love the way that you show up in the world, and I love the way that you empower and encourage and support women, not only in the world of AI, but just in business in general, like showing the way and lighting the path, that it doesn't matter if you think that you are a starving artist in your mind right now, because there is a version of you that can be anything that you want, and you kind of light the way for that. And I'm just so thankful that you came into my world. And I want to ask if you would share some tips or tools from your own personal growth toolbox that helped you be able to create that mindset that you needed to get from that space where you were to where you are now.
Oh gosh, I would say that there's a few tools that I would love to share. One is getting out and having the opportunity to meet and talk to people. And I know that, since COVID has happened, we do a lot online, which is still great, any way that you can actually meet people. But I would say that you and I made a really great connection meeting in real life. Yes. And the reality is that people want to do business with people that they know. And the best way to be able to do that is to actually get out and do networking events, get out and participate in different types of masterminds where you can start to form relationships. And I would say that's one of the most important tools that you have. I think the second most important tool, and I'm not trying to beat a dead horse here, but really the most important thing in your business is being able to have a strong, consistent brand that you show up with every single time, because that is showing your consistency, and it's also showing the fact that you've established the importance of being able to have a strong brand. The third thing is when you think about technology and you think about sort of innovation, I would say that certainly you can be cautious, but I would say don't necessarily be afraid to try something new. You can always try it and decide it's not for you and go away from it. But I would also say that you want to find people that you trust that are innovative in this space and just sort of ride along with them and let them help guide you, because if it's somebody that you trust, you know that they're not going to be leading you down a path that would be concerning to you. So those would be sort of my 3 tips.
So good. So one more thing before we wrap up. Time flies when I talk
Absolutely.
to you. Love it. What would you say to somebody another trailblazer, because I consider you a trailblazer out there in the world. What piece of advice or sage wisdom would you give to other trailblazers out there who are on their own journey as an entrepreneur but maybe don't have the confidence or maybe are afraid to really show up because of what other people will say, or maybe have fears around, being in business in general for anybody, but especially for a woman who really wants to, who feels that tap, that says I can be more, but I don't know how?
Yeah, I think that finding a mentor is really important. And I don't think that people really talk about mentorship as much as they should. But when I think about when I first got out of school and I had an illustration major and, they just told me in school, you just freelance. Like they gave me basically no skills. It was like this magic button. I thought I should just freelance. And the most important piece that I had was having good mentors along the way, and I've had some incredible mentors. And I would say don't feel like you have to do everything on your own. There are a plethora of people who want to be able to help and support you. You just have to be willing to ask for help. And that is not a sign of weakness. That is actually a sign of incredible leadership and strength.
So good. Oh, my gosh. This has been such a mind-growing conversation. And I want to just take a minute and let people know where to go to learn more about you and where can they connect into your energy and where can they go learn from you.
Absolutely. So the best way is you can certainly find me and connect with me on Facebook. That's just, I think actually my Facebook is still my main name, so you would go to facebook.com/Elizabeth Ratliff. Otherwise, you can certainly connect with me under my normal name, which is Elizabeth Goede on LinkedIn. And then you also can reach out to me directly on my website, which is ratliffconsulting.com.
Thank you so much for joining us today. Thank you for taking the time to shine a light on this important topic, to encourage other entrepreneurs who are also on this journey, and for hanging out with me in the Mind Grow Studio. I love you so much. Thank you. And I want to thank the listeners for joining us here, and I hope that you go tune in to Elizabeth and you tap into her brilliance because she is shining it all over the place, and you will be so glad that you did. I am your host, Stephanie Kathan. You've been listening to the Mind Grow Radio Storyteller Series podcast, and until we meet again, keep shining in your brilliance. And special thanks again to our special guest, Elizabeth Goede, who just grew my mind, and hopefully yours too. And I will see you on the other side. Bye-bye, everybody.